Okay, so the Champions League final between PSG and Inter Milan in Munich has concluded with the biggest ever winning margin in Champions League or European Cup history with a 5-0 win to PSG. We've seen higher scoring finals in the history of the competition with a 7-3 for Real Madrid over Eintracht Frankfurt in the past, but this is the biggest winning margin of 5 goals. Ridiculous. And the pace of the game was set from the first whistle to the final whistle. PSG, just their intensity, their speed, their work rate, and the interchangeability of positions. Dembele at times was coming really deep. He's meant to be a centre forward. Hakimi, the right back, ends up in the centre forwards position, striking position, to score the opening goal. So there was definite hints of total football there. There were hints of a 4-3-3 counter-attack there. There were hints of a back five at times there. Luis Enrique was very, very flexible with his approach to the game, and he's obviously told the players, play what's in front of you in attack. In defence, there obviously is the defensive systems, but in attack, very, very flexible. They were very open, and PSG are known to concede goals. They didn't look flustered. It took 75 minutes for Inter to get a shot on target. Inter just did not show up today. Now, DeMarco's had a nightmare for the first 2 goals defensively. The first goal, he plays everyone on sides, loses his opposite number, Hakimi, who just goes into the box and taps it in. Now, Doué is an exciting young talent. That pass for Hakimi is a great pass, but it's just the general whole team's press, the energy, the speed at which they do stuff, which creates that goal. It had been building for about 12 minutes when it comes. So you could see this was happening. Now, you would expect a response from Inter Milan going 1-0 down. There wasn't one, because they had a brief flicker. They're down the other end. They're trying to force a corner. They're trying to get a bit of possession. And then the quick-paced counter-attack comes. Dembele, that counter-attack is brilliant, led by Dembele, and it just drives the team up the field. Doué is in the right-wing position. DeMarco's lost him in the track back. And then when he does turn and face him, he turns his back and the shot comes in. There's no closing down. He's given time and space. It is a slight deflection past Jan Sommer, but that was a brilliant, fast-paced counter-attack. Now, it could have been 4 or 5 before half-time with the way PSG were playing. It was 2-0 at half-time. There was a little bit more fight from Inter in the second half. They were getting a bit more possession. They were creating a little bit more. They were winning a couple of the 50-50s that they had been losing in the first half. And then it's 3-0 in 63 minutes, and then Inter Milan, you could see they'd given up. They gave up when they went 3. At 2-0, if they got that next goal, okay, we could see a comeback. At 3-0, Inter Milan surrendered at that point. They gave up. They absolutely gave up. They waved the white flag, and PSG could do what they want then. And you would think at 3-0, Doué scored his second goal in 63 minutes, 3-0. It's a brilliant goal, by the way. Absolutely brilliant goal. Again, the counter-attack, the pass. Dembele's little back flick. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But Inter Milan just surrendered. They absolutely surrendered. The fourth goal by Kadavas Skylar, the Georgian international, he had shown a couple of times that he had a few moments where he's had a couple of shots at this point. And then he scores his goal in 72 minutes to make it 4. And you're thinking, PSG could just pass it around at this point, take the sting out of the game. They're pushing for a 5th. They could have had 10. Inter Milan hadn't even had a shot on target at 72 minutes. PSG have scored 4 goals by this point. 4 goals. Just the press, the energy, the rotation of players. Hakimi for the opening goal. He's a right back in the centre forward position. So, Marquinhos had times where he's ended up in the centre. It was like a bit of total football, a bit of 4-3-3 counter attack. A 4-5-1 high press. Luis Enrique had very flexible tactics and allowed his players a little bit of free rein as well. I think he gave his players a lot of free rein, had a lot of confidence in them, and they exude confidence. Inter Milan just looked beaten from the first whistle. Mayulu, now this is the important goal for me because I have divided opinions on PSG. I've divided views on PSG winning the Champions League. He scored his goal in 87 minutes. He'd been on the field for 2 minutes at this point. he's an academy product, and this is something where PSG have lacked for many, many years, since 2011. They've bought the big name players in, tried to make an all-star 11, go out there, win the Champions League, and it hasn't happened. They made a final a couple of years ago, but it hasn't happened for a variety of reasons. Yeah, they win the French League all the time, apart from a couple of seasons, but now there's been a change in philosophy with PSG. Instead of spending big money on all these superstar established players, these mercenary players, why not scout the younger players from around France and around Europe and also develop from within? And this is why this side, so young, so hungry, this is a good thing. But at the same time, they still have this infinite wealth behind them. And I'm a bit torn on how I feel about PSG putting 5 past Inter. Yeah, on the night, most one-sided, dominant performance I've ever seen in a Champions League or any European final for that matter. Even Chelsea's 4-1 the other night against Betis, that first half they were outplayed. They had to play in the second half to win the game. I've never seen such a one-sided final in all my time, ever. We've seen some dominant sides win, yes. Barcelona beating Manchester United back in 2009. That was a dominant performance, but it wasn't that one-sided. No. There was still some fight from Manchester United. Inter didn't get a kick. They were terrible. They never got going. They looked old. They looked tired. Inzaghi on the touchline. Simone Inzaghi just looked exasperated with his players just not performing the tasks that he had set them. Basic principles, basic skills. And so we could be on for a shift in the European game. A shift that the PSG ownership has wanted for 14 years. Real Madrid were dismantled earlier on in this Champions League. Barcelona were only one Spanish side made it to any of the European finals in Real Betis, and they were dismantled in their final. We are seeing a shift. We've seen 2 English teams win the 2 lesser finals. We've seen 3 English teams make the finals of the 3 European competitions. Half the teams were English league sides. But I will say this. This is a moment where we are now going to see a seismic shift, because this team is young. There's room to grow. They have money with the ownership. Mayulu is an example of their academy working, which hasn't done for the previous 14 years. I think we could see a very dominant PSG side when it comes to European football for years to come. What needs to happen in France is other French teams compete for the title. What needs to happen is more French teams competing for the European honours in all 3 European competitions at club level. And that will then be the seismic shift that I think French football needs. Because I've been critical of how PSG's ownership has damaged French football domestically, damaged European football because other clubs and other wealthy owners have come in and just spent money in a fashion that is damaging for the football economy. This is why a lot of clubs are struggling financially, big clubs struggling financially, and it's catching up with them. Even the other French clubs have said we cannot spend on the level of PSG, which is a problem. And so even PSG now are spending less. So it'll be interesting to see if this creates some positive news for French football other than PSG, because the commentary team were fawning over the fact that PSG are liked now in France. They're really not. French football fans hate PSG, apart from PSG fans, obviously. They are not a very popular club in France in regards to fan base. They're the 5th most popular club in France for size of fan base. There are other clubs that have much bigger fan bases, that are more entrenched, and a lot of French football fans don't like PSG. It's a fact. Winning the Champions League as a French club, however, is important, because there are only 2 French sides that have won European honours, and PSG is one of them. Cup Winners' Cup back in '96 and this. Marseille's the other club. And so that could prove a seismic shift that, hey, French clubs can compete on the European level. And I've been very critical of the lack of European success of French clubs. When I do the club history videos, for example, like, how have these French clubs not achieved anything? They've won World Cups, they've won Euros as a national side, they've produced some of the greatest players the game has ever seen. Zidane, Platini, Henri. Yet their lack of success at the European level in the club game is striking. Inter Milan, I don't know where Inter Milan go from here, but they need a rebuild. They missed out on the Italian title, okay, by a point. Okay, not the end of the world. But they were so outclassed by this PSG side. So outclassed. And yeah, there were some players that had lost their legs in this game. You could see they just were defeated before the first kickoff. The game was won before kickoff, I think, because youthful exuberance, veteran doggedness, youthful exuberance won, and won comfortably. And you know, all the goals were brilliant. They were all from open play, which is important. All sweeping counter-attacks and sweeping build-up play. None of this slow, methodical. It was all done quickly. On a performance standpoint, this is football you like to see. If Inter had shown a bit of willing and a bit of pace and a bit of attack as well, it could have been a very open, high-scoring game. More high-scoring than a 5-0. Because I think this PSG side does have that weakness in them, where they can be very open, but Inter Milan was so insular that it was just one-way traffic. But there we go. PSG have won their first Champions League and their second European trophy. Record-breaking winning margin. It's 5-0, so there we go. Inter Milan, is it time to tear the squad down and rebuild? Because they were outclassed massively. And we shall see. Is it time for Italian football to change its philosophy at club level in regards to how teams are put together with the veteran and youth mix? Because only one PSG player tonight was over the age of 30, and I was still older than Marquinhos. Yeah, I'm older than the entire PSG starting lineup. So, and that worries me because I'm only 35. Whereas several Inter players are older than me in their late 30s, some pushing 40. So that tells you something, that a lot of teams now that are successful are built with youth, with a limited smattering of experience, mostly youth in mind. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on PSG Inter Milan in the comment section below, and I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.